Well, hello. Thank you all for joining us for this town hall. My name is Dennis Robinson. I am the Director of Programs and Partnership, the new Director of Programs and Partnerships here at Opera Colorado. I began here about almost 2 months ago now, on August 15th. I am coming from Seattle Opera, where I was in the same position there, leading the education, community engagement, and second stage programming for the organization there. Um, I'm so delighted to be here at Opera Colorado and to have been approached by an amazing leader who I'm very excited to work with and collaborate with and to help to grow in an organization with such an amazing history of over 40 years. So a few housekeeping things. If everyone can ensure that you keep your mics muted, and your cameras off, that will help Barbara and I just stay pinned to the top. So thank you all for doing that. This evening we'll do about 30 minutes of Q&A between Barbara, Lynne, Jamison, and I. And then we will open up, and in that Q&A, we'll use some pre-submitted questions that were submitted by many of you and many other community members. And then we'll open it up for an opportunity for to put questions into chat later. So without further ado, I'm so delighted to introduce Barbara Lynne Jamison. Many of you may have met her already. I know that Barbara's been all over town, but we're really excited to have this conversation. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you, Barbara.
Yeah, me too. Thanks.
Um, s- so Barbara, who is the new general director and CEO of Opera Colorado, began just 2 weeks before I did. So I believe in the beginning of August. And Barbara, can you tell us a bit about your history and how you got to this point in your career?
Ah, wow, how'd I get here? I was a singer. I just sang. I just sang because I loved it and was in high school choir and got a scholarship and I was just going to be singing and I just got jobs singing and I had a great life singing. And then I wasn't able to sing anymore. I lost my voice in an accident and so I thought I would go into arts education policy. I was really excited about education and what arts do for us as a society and as a culture, especially when we're introducing it to people in schools and at the youngest of our citizens and culture. So but I ended up working in programming instead. And I was very fortunate to be working at the Met Guild and in charge of all their programs and their teaching artist training and their training all of those folks. Ended up at Seattle Opera where I started working there to begin a lot of new programs, writing a lot of programs for young people in schools, working with community engagement. Eventually becoming the programs and partnerships, director of programs and partnerships, and doing second stage programming at Seattle Opera as well, producing chamber operas there. I then was approached to go to Kentucky Opera, where I have spent the last 7 years. And then I was really excited to come here to Denver, to Opera Colorado, and be here for the next chapter of this company. That's it in a nutshell.
So you mentioned that your most recent assignment or position was at Kentucky Opera.
Mhm.
Can you tell us a little bit? I'm curious about your legacy there. What did you leave behind in Louisville that you're really proud of, and how will that experience shape your tenure here at Opera Colorado?
Hmm. I was really excited to go to Louisville because of the way that the community embraced opera as a cultural um, connector for all people in the area and throughout Kentucky. Um, we were at 3 operas a season. I think one of the most things I'm excited about is that I was able to expand it to 5 and sometimes 6 productions a year. I think in expanding them, we were able to meet more people through the art form over time. Now, they weren't all grand opera. Some of them were chamber operas, and some of them were on our main stage. And some of them were um, youth operas, operas that were written by youth and performed by youth. So written by for youth and performed by youth. So it was the ability to use opera to connect all parts of the community. Another thing that we did that I was really excited was we started the city's annual Juneteenth Jubilee celebration. It became the cornerstone event for the city, and the city, the Metro Louisville embraced that as their cornerstone event. So it was very exciting, and we filled the hall every year for that over the last few years. So a lot of community events, but also just how opera reaches a community was a bit of a shift that I enjoyed while I was there.
You talked a little bit about the opera being a cultural connector. I'd like to dig into that a little bit. What do you mean by that? How does opera connect communities? What can an opera company, a company that produces opera as its mission, how can it be a connector of culture and community?
I think the thing that really we have in our corner for that is that we are storytellers, right? And we know that when we tell stories to people, we can connect with them through that. We all have different stories and we have different ways of expressing those stories. And we've got hundreds of years of stories to share. And we've got hundreds of stories yet to share that we haven't created yet in the art form. So it's looking back and looking forward. And I think that when we look into why stories from the inherited repertoire have lasted, it's because there's this universal truth to them. There's a universal understanding that despite maybe your cultural background or your ethnic background, there's a nugget that just that takes humanity to its core. And then we're able to think about those stories with our minds and see them acted on the stage and put in costumes and put on a set. But the music that sings to us really touches our souls in an innate way. Our brains are wired to accept music in that way. I mean, I could get all geeky on that one, but our brains are wired to hear music and story intertwined. We've been doing it, I mean, since humans were in caves and dancing around campfires. It's just inherent in who we are as humans. So I think if we remember that that is what the art form was actually blossomed and born from, we are able to look and see how that reaches different communities in different ways. And we're able to craft it because opera is big enough to do that throughout the world and throughout culture and age difference and economic differences. Opera is big enough.
Yeah, I'll say that one thing that really inspired me to take the leap and come to Colorado was the way you speak about opera companies. These organizations, which are tax exempt for mostly education purposes, but are meant to be connectors of community. And the way you talk about it and the way you once you spoke about inherited repertoire, like a painting on the wall, and maybe you can go into that a bit, but I've taken that and I've never been able to put it into words, but these inherited, I'll let you describe how we can take inherited repertoire and use it to connect everyday people.
Yeah, when we look at these stories, sometimes we think that they are so disconnected from us that we don't have to really explore them. But that's the beauty of something, a rich literature. Really rich literature allows you to look at it from a variety of different perspectives. And and if we take that into consideration, and then also consider that we're a nonprofit, and a nonprofit's purpose is to serve the community, to add something to the community that otherwise couldn't happen. Then we look at how do we serve people with these stories and I see it as a connector. And these stories have often been put on a stage just through a certain lens, like maybe one person's lens, and then we like a Zeffirelli Bohème, like we see that from the Met. Zeffirelli is the director who created this production that we sort of imagine when we think of La Bohème at the Metropolitan Opera, right? But there are many ways to interpret that story, and Zeffirelli's production looks very different than Puccini's did, but we don't really try to go back to Puccini's. We just have this 20th century mindset of it. But Zeffirelli curated that in a way that was different from Puccini and the way Puccini saw it when he first saw it premiered for the first time, or probably even the second. In Puccini's time. The beauty of that is because it isn't just a painting on a wall. We get to curate it. We get to, if you go into a museum, you see how a curator has set maybe a piece of art against another sculpture or something, or not other paintings that add perspective to that painting in a way that you might not have seen something before. And we get to do that as producers. We're not traveling a show through the country. That's something else people don't always know about us. We're producing it here. We're choosing the singers. We're choosing the director. We are crafting these works on the stage of the Ellie Caulkins Opera House and in the community and in schools because of who we're directly serving. And so when we curate those stories for who they're intended to serve, we get to tell the story in a way that responds to the listener, that speaks to people's listening and how they are ready to move forward. And we also are not a stagnant art form. We aren't finished. We don't tie it up with a bow and finish it. These are humans on a stage. Nothing's ever the same twice. And when we bring it back in a few years, over time, maybe it is a piece of art that we want to put back on the stage. We may choose a different director, and we'll choose different singers, and we will have a different set and costume, so that we all get to see that story through yet another lens and gain more insight into why this story matters for us. And that's our job, and that's your job, Dennis, too, and helping in programs and partnerships at curating these for the community beyond our marketing engine, but also in how we're talking about it with our community partners, which I'm so grateful to have you on board to be spearheading those as well.
Thank you. I want to back up a little. I jumped ahead. I got too excited. But can you talk a little bit about what does a general director do? I think many people have an idea, but I think people don't really, many people wouldn't realize the scope of what a general director does in an opera company. Can you, in your words, tell us what that is?
Yeah, in an opera company, often in our model, the general director is both the artistic chief executive officer and the chief artistic officer. So they're kind of combined into one. If you look at ballets and symphonies, sometimes they have two heads that are co-equal heads. And this one's a little different. In opera companies, general director usually does both. So I work with my team, my amazing team, to identify operas together that we want to do. I also help to I work with the CFO to make sure that we are financially moving ahead in a financially viable way with this art. So I do like holding the two of them because I like the business of making art work, and making art and making it work. And so I'm excited to do both of those jobs here. Did that answer the question you were asking, or that you inherited? I know some people are asking that question.
I think so.
Pretty
I
much
think
what I
so,
do.
and we can always come back to it
Yeah,
later.
that's pretty much.
Um, Go ahead.
I said that's pretty much what I do. But I have a
Oh,
whole team of people helping me and an amazing board of directors that also works hand in hand with me to get all of it done. It takes a whole village.
so we talked a lot about this idea of being a community organization or a cultural connector.
Mhm.
And it sounds like that is a part of your vision for Opera Colorado. Is there is there any other part of your vision for the organization that you'd like to tell us about? That's
Hmm.
a very vague question, but
Very big question. But I think, I mean, I can't separate what I think of opera from being a community connector. I can't separate it because it is storytelling at its most glorious. It is storytelling at its most beautiful and its most powerful. Um, and our challenge is just to help others see themselves in the stories, help everyone see themselves in these stories and feel welcome in the theater and to realize it's a social connector. I believe opera is made of people. It's one of the things that makes it so um, financially fragile is that it's not scalable in a way that we think of like movies are scalable. You spend the money on the production and you get just to run it out into movies. We it's hard time scaling it because everything we're doing is paying people. We're paying people to make this art, to contribute their skills, their talents, their intellectual capital, their creative capital. It connects a community in making it, and then we connect the community around it. I think one thing that I just really have been enjoying as I meet everybody in these smaller groups that I've been on my little list on my listening tour um, is learning how people here want and need to be connected. Because it's not, I'm not the kind of person that wants to come in and just bring an idea and set it down. I've got ideas and I've worked in opera in a lot of different cities across the country. Um, but I think the beauty of opera is that it's like a conversation and you curate it to the person you're having your conversation with. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of art sparks people's imaginations here. In fact, we just recently sent out a survey, and I hope that everybody on this Zoom today has had a chance to respond. But we really need to hear what you want to see in the future of Opera Colorado. Um, and we are taking all of those in, and we are going to be looking at those as we plan the next season. So we're going through La Traviata this year. I didn't plan the season, but I'm happy. I'm so excited to be putting these on the stage. And then we are very quickly, as quickly as possible, putting together next season for you all. So that's, I'm just excited about what that means. And my vision really is to facilitate the community's vision, what the community wants to support, what the community feels it can support here. And whatever that is, when we test it and we get excited around a shared vision together as a community, we can make it possible. I believe people who align themselves together around a purpose can do great things.
yeah, I mean, something that I keep hearing when I have conversations with folks in the community and stakeholders in Opera Colorado is about the legacy of world-class music and art and theater that's happening with a great orchestra. Maestro Ari Pelto celebrating his 10th year. We're celebrating 20 years in the Ellie this year, or next calendar year, I guess. Um, and I think all that you're saying, your vision is just building upon that, which is really exciting. Many people also ask, recently as an organization went to performing two productions. And the question I hear almost every day is when will you increase that? When will we go to three operas or more?
Well, I would love to be doing as many operas as this community can support doing. I love opera and I want to do as many of them as we can. Um, what we need to know is what is this community willing to support? Because as we've talked about, our business model is not around ticket sales, it's around a donor model. And I think sometimes we think that the donors who give 6 and 7 figure gifts are the ones that matter. And mine, I can only give 500 a year, or I can only give 1,000 a year, or I can only give $12 a month. That I don't matter as much. And but when we all come together and give what we can and know that we want opera of a certain caliber and we want to have multiple things to choose from and to come to a whole season, um, then we can do it. We can absolutely do that. This community is big enough. This community is resourceful enough. Opera is big enough. There are ways to do that. And so right now in my, just as I'm ending my second month here and starting my third, we are trying to ascertain how much does this community want to support. And I believe that as we figure that out, we will be able to find opera to do that. I have no doubt. And that I hate that to be a non-answer, but we cannot do it without the community. That we don't exist without the community, because we exist for them and because of the community. So that is what we're looking to do, and I believe we can get it done. We're in a great position to get that started. And we've had I'm just excited to see what we can do moving forward. But I do believe that we need to stay connected to our history as a historical art form, and we need to be contributing to our future as an art form that will exist for centuries to come. So I believe that we need to remember the butterflies and the traviatas and do them faithfully periodically to remember where we came from. And we'll be looking at new works as well.
And I mean, you and I have had many conversations about opera being more than just those three, sometimes five, but those three operas in an opera house, right? All the Can you talk more about what the organization will do in between November and May when there are shows in the LA Caulkins Opera House? But when other people may think that the opera is asleep or not very busy, some of those other things. And I'm happy to help, but
Yeah, well, we have already started the season with a wonderful performance. Our artist in residence gave a fantastic um, performance. What was it, 2 weeks ago?
Mhm.
To kick off the season. It was a wonderful celebration. We got to meet them, our amazing artists in residence who are here to sing in our schools on our main stage to learn. It's an apprenticeship program where after artists have gotten through usually their master's degree, they start to work on an apprenticeship program and learn what it feels like to actually sing in a professional opera company on a professional stage. And we're grateful to have those artists here, those emerging artists. So we've already done that. We've already started rehearsals for La Traviata. The singers got here earlier this week. And as I said, they're here a month ahead of time, preparing, putting the staging together, getting costume fittings. The costume department is making all these alterations to the costumes. That's already happening. And in preparation for our November 1st opening. We'll then have some things going on in schools. The artists in residence will be performing in schools throughout the state, and we even go up to southern Wyoming and all through the state. We will go as far and wide again as they want to have us, but we love going to reach tens of thousands of students a year. We're production of Pirates of Penzance in these schools. We'll have Family Day on the stage of the Ellie Caulkins Opera House in the spring. We'll have Sip and Sing. We do it at this jazz club Nocturne. We love having our Sip and Sing. Those tickets will go on sale soon. So we don't just stick to opera. This team is busy year round, providing opportunities for the community to engage at all ages, to engage in concerts and small operas and youth operas and big operas. Those are just some of the things we do, and we're going to be expanding those as well, expanding those opportunities and even looking at considering what opera looks like. We think of opera as being a grand art form. We always talk about it being the grandest of the art forms. But that doesn't always mean has to be scaled. It's sometimes can be very powerful and intimate too. And what I referred to earlier is chamber operas. And I think we'll be exploring that over time too. What is a chamber opera and how is that also powerful when we take it off of a big stage and put it in different places, like we do with our students in different places too. So yeah, we're busy all through the year, and we hope that you'll check us out on the website so that you'll know how you want to plug in this time between the two operas this year. But we've got a lot going on. We'd love to have you.
One of the questions here that were submitted through our survey is, will Opera Colorado offer more contemporary opera? Or what is the prospect of more operas by living composers being produced?
Yeah, I really believe in that the opera company's responsibility, a company like ours, our responsibility is to do a wide variety of the art form. Operas, we kind of think about opera starting in maybe 1820. We might do a Verdi, we might do some earlier things. We might even go back to a little bit earlier and do some Mozart, but that's usually the earliest we think of doing. And when we think of opera or grand opera, I love looking even before that. Opera had hundreds of years of music before that and theater before that. And I do love looking at the newer stuff. There's some beautiful new operas coming out. There are a lot that happened in the 20th and 21st century. We've just got so many operas. I wish I could do all of them at some point or another. So yes, the new, the old, the unwritten yet. Maybe some people ask me, what is your favorite opera? And sometimes I say, I don't know if it's been written yet. I just don't know. Because opera isn't, I don't know. It's still happening.
Yeah. Um, I've worked in opera companies all across the country and consistently hear about the inaccessibility and the unaffordability of opera. And so, one of the questions here is, what are we as an organization, are you doing to make opera more accessible to people who are new or people who can't afford it?
Well, our tickets start around $40, which isn't that terribly expensive, but it might be expensive for some. We offer pay what you wish opportunities so that if you can't do the 40, there are other opportunities to come. We do have a lot of free stuff in the community as well. I know, Dennis, you might want to, if you want to chime in and talk about any of those that you'll be doing, I'm happy to tell you that. But there are free opportunities and there are paid opportunities, and we make sure that anybody who wants to see a school show can see a school show in their school. We don't want the cost to prohibit anyone from seeing and having an opera in their school. And that happens because we have donors who can subsidize the cost of those and who choose to give and make sure that we don't have to say no to children and we don't have to say no to potential new audience members. And sometimes it's not the cost, it's the value. Perhaps I might spend $100 to see my favorite artist or maybe more at the local at an arena, but I don't know what I'm thinking about opera, and I'm not maybe sure I want to spend that much on opera yet. But I might spend 40 and realize, oh, I like this, and I'll come back and spend. Now I want to sit there, and I'm gonna spend a little bit more so I can sit there. So sometimes it's just the on ramp. Sometimes cost isn't the issue at all, but it's feeling welcome in a place, in a space. And so we're looking at ways to do that too. I'm really glad that we offer titles in Spanish and English here. We have captions on the backs. So any opera that we do in a foreign language to English, actually any opera we do, whether it's in English or not, we have titles so people can follow along with that. And I think some people forget that we do that and how important that is if it's your first time and you're feeling kind of like an outsider in this space, what to
Or
do.
people don't know. So many times people don't even know that opera companies provide translation and they're not showing up because of that reason. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, sure.
But just to add on to your point about free opportunities, I think people can expect for the artists in residence to be performing in the community at festivals, in libraries, in senior living communities. I think
Mhm.
we have, as an organization, have a very successful history of taking fully staged operas with live accompaniment to schools all across the country, and with sets and costumes and I think we really want to build upon that and see how we can reach more folks
Yeah.
in that way, in a more intimate setting, and meet them where they are, right? Not
Yeah.
everyone. Opera is an art form that was historically excluded a lot of people. And so not everyone will be comfortable to come to the Ellie yet, but when we meet them where they are, they will eventually come to the Ellie
They
or
will.
the loft.
Yeah.
Um, I lost my place because I was rambling on. But pay what you wish. This year you mentioned pay what you wish, and I just wanted you to, if you could expand a little, because I know the organization has done pay what you wish in the past, but this season we're doing it a little differently. And so if you could talk a little bit about that.
We can, and we're going to be announcing this publicly. You guys are getting to be some of the first that have heard about this, but we are going to be offering pay what you wish opportunities for every single performance that we do. So it used to be that we would use a pay what you wish opportunity if we had, if we just for different reasons, if we had certain nights that we could do it, we are going to actually hold back seats at every performance to give people who want to try the opera, perhaps for the first time, perhaps they haven't seen it in a long time and they want to come back, a pay what you wish opportunity. They'll be able to get those on the website. Yeah, I'm just really excited that we can offer this for every single performance that we do.
And it's not just those pay what you wish tickets, but the organization also offers free tickets to military veterans through
Right.
VetTix and many other community organizations, which we hope to continue to build also.
Yeah.
Uh, Another question that was here, and this, folks, if you want to think of your questions, we'll take them shortly, likely after this question. So, what ideas do you have for making opera more accessible, other than not financially, but for those folks who have been historically excluded from marginalized or BIPOC communities? How do you plan uh, to engage those communities?
Um, opera has such beautiful stories, but they were created in a time sometimes when we didn't really take into account today's world and what today's world looks like. And there was a lot of the world was, if we look at this inherited rep particularly, um, people didn't understand. We're doing Butterfly coming up. People, it was the word exotic was often used, right? It was othered. It was so far away that the whole perspective around a of an Italian team of opera writers thinking about a Japanese culture was just, we can't even comprehend how foreign and far away it must have seemed to them at that time, because the world has become so small and interconnected. Um, we also know that over time, the world as it's gotten smaller, we've had a lot of pain that has been inflicted on different communities. And we look at America in the United States, and we can see how say the Japanese were treated historically in our country ourselves. Many, many times all through history, and then and even still today, how they were portrayed in film, how um, they were not they were treated as an other, or Japanese females or Asian American females were treated as kind of and they were objectified in a way. So while that was never Puccini's intention, I don't believe at all. I believe that Puccini and they were trying to lift up that culture, and they were looking at it with an admiration. We have to recognize that that intention hasn't spoken that to everyone throughout history. We just have to listen and recognize that when somebody says that something's inflicted pain on them, that we hear them, that we accept that. So that doesn't take away the beauty of the art, and it doesn't mean that we have to stop performing that art necessarily, but we have to do it wisely and carefully and considerately. And as we talked about earlier, this curating, instead of just doing it just to do it, we think very deliberately. And Dennis is working with some community partnerships to help listen to these communities and how these communities hear that piece. I've often also talked to people from Japan who admire this piece and admire the heroism of Cho-Cho-san, for instance, and what she did as a samurai's daughter and the way she did it. But we don't understand that culture. We don't understand the samurai culture. So when we look at these pieces from other countries and other times, and we can only look at them through our lens, and we can choose to broaden our lens and to soften our lens, and be very careful about how we do that. So I think that's an accessibility piece, because I know people might just go, I can't come see that. And I'm not saying they need to, that if that's going to inflict harm on you, I don't need to say that that needs to happen, but to know that we are being careful as curators, and we are being responsible by listening to communities. I think that also happens in Traviata. Traviata is an escort. She was she had she had a career that many saw was very distasteful, and have no, but and people have softened that and go, oh well, she wasn't really doing that. Well, that's exactly what she was doing. And so how do we look at that and through an open lens, and accept that's that was a different time and a different place, and how this was written in the music, but how does it speak to us today to look at somebody? I mean, we look at Pretty Woman, the movie, that was patterned after the same idea as La Traviata. And we soften it, and we can see it through a different, more romantic lens, or Moulin Rouge. But we need to look at these characters very carefully and realize that while we might be used to it because we have done opera for so long, we just kind of get used to it. We realize that new people coming in, if we're going to be accessible to new audiences, we need to break this down perhaps a little differently, and carefully and considerately, so that these people feel welcome, that they're not missing something, that they're not offended, and they're not hurt when they're in our midst, looking at something that's meant to give them joy and deliver beauty.
Thank you for that. We will enable the chat feature, believe. And if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. We may not be able to answer every question, but we will certainly try to answer as many as possible. But while we wait for those, many one question I've been getting a lot, and there's a question here, is that what specific questions do you plan on making to our education programming? I think my title is different, and so some people may feel that we're pulling back or doing less programming in schools or in our community. When actually, I think, from my point of view, both of us, you and I, have started our careers in education, and have expanded. And so both of us are very passionate about that. But I'd love to hear what changes do you or we plan to make to um, how we engage folks through education programming in the next
Mhm.
few seasons.
Yeah, we have a long history of doing amazing education work and reaching so many kids, so many schools, having some really creative programming for youth and families and schools. So I think at this point we're just looking to invest more into it, listen to the educators to see if there's any changes that need to happen, how we can add to that accessibility piece. Are there age groups that we want to lean into a little bit more? We've got this backstage pass that we're looking at. So we are far from pulling back on education. It's kind of the opposite. We are leaning in. That is really extremely important to me, that we do it. We continue to do that and do it very well at the highest. We often talk about artistic excellence. And I believe in being excellent in all we do. So we will continue our excellence through education, and continue to grow that. We can't always do things the same. We just as I was saying about crafting, productions, we always have to be looking at them differently and through a different lens. I think it's a new chapter, and so it's time to do a little audit. So we're just going to look and see what's ringing really well with our community, and what do they want us to lean more into, and how can we shift. So we're just still responding very much to the community, to our schools, to our educators right now. But we fortunately don't have to start from square one. We have a wonderful history of doing that here under former leadership. So it's nice to be able to step into something that's been going so well and to get to just take it to the next level.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I've been adding this. I'm standing on my soapbox for a second because I've been adding it in every conversation I have. But moving to Colorado, I learned that it's one of only 11 states that students can graduate high school without ever having a music or art class. It is not a curricular uh,
Environment.
requirement. And so I think that what we really want to do is engage educators and administrators in how we can support that happening in schools. There's no way, as an opera organization or as a performing arts organization, we can replace arts and music education, but we can support them
And we can
to
remind them of how important it is. So
right.
they see it in their kids, they see it in their students and their teachers, and they go, oh, we have to have this back. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And so I'm just going to say that people are going to get sick of hearing me say it, but I think it's so important. I don't think people know it. And I think it's so important to say that there are kids in the state that aren't experiencing music or art at
Yeah.
all.
I didn't know that. You told me that. I didn't know that until you told it to me. It's remarkable.
So we have one question, and if you have a question, feel free to send it. It's will you be working with new or recurring set designers? And I'll expand that to costume designers, projection designers, production teams.
Mhm.
And how do you select collaborators?
Yeah, oh, I love that's one of my favorite parts. Well, it's all my favorite. I just love doing this. This is a great job to have. Yeah, there are set again. I like to use people that I've worked with before. Sometimes it's nice to have that shared vocabulary. Sometimes it's efficient, but sometimes it can become inefficient, because then there's a lot of shorthand going on. You make assumptions, and sometimes the art can suffer as a result because you get a little, just used to things. You get a little comfortable, right? So there's a benefit in doing both. And I think it depends on the show. It depends on the timing. It depends on the vision. I will often go to a stage director, and talk about why we're doing a piece. Not just that we want to do this piece, will you be the director? But we're doing this, we want to do this opera for this reason, because the community and these are the things this is how we're going to connect it to our community. Are you on board with connecting this opera to this community in this way? What is your vision for that? So it's not just about the title and it's not just about the designers, but it is about that connecting to opera again, connecting community opera.
Well, that's no, these folks are not very curious folks because there's not many questions coming in.
No.
Is there anything else that, oh, here we have, how do you see, I mentioned projections and I think I opened up a can of worms,
Um,
but Randy says, how do you see digital scenography or immersive tech influencing opera in the next few years?
Yeah, there are a lot of advancements being made in that. And that's another point. Sometimes scenic designers, you know, there's an evolution that's happening, and maybe there's somebody who's really curious about that and wants to lean into that and has some really brilliant ideas about it. We're open to that. I think it can be amazing. I mean, if we look at what existed when opera started off, even in Wagner, but even pre-Wagner production style, we didn't have electric lights. We didn't have like all these stairs and castle walls that are being built. They had a drop in the back. They had a painted drop at the most. Um, we have the art form has evolved and grown and changed based on the resources that we had available, the opera houses that we were in. We ended up getting electric lights, and I think lighting is one of the best things about it. Just adds it paints a stage in a way that it's just not visible without it. So I think projections and this LED, all these things that are happening right now are just sort of the next iteration of theatrical arts in our world. So absolutely, we're willing to explore it. Yeah, there's some neat things happening.
There are, and I think not only on the production tech side, but I think many things we talk about are partnerships and how we can work with other organizations within our, whether it be community organizations or performing arts organizations in our community to produce the work we're doing.
So Dennis,
Um,
I'm going to turn that around on you just a little bit. So we
okay.
often hear about are you going to partner with other arts organizations and how are you going to partner with other arts organizations? But one of the things that you and I believe very deeply in is that that non-arts partners can be as important to connect with as the arts partners. So how are you thinking about the future of this company when we look at your title being programs and partnerships? The programs is the education and community engagement, and then the partnerships we put in your title to actively show that partnering is important to us. How do you how what does that mean to you? How will you go about that? What does that mean here?
Yeah, I think it's all about building relationships, which you and I have been doing for the last 2 months, but our entire careers, just in a new community now. It's about conversations. I think we have as many, my goal is to have as many coffee meetings and conversations with as many organizations and many people as I can. And hopefully, out of that, more conversations happen. And when you have 4 or 5 conversations, something in there sparks something. And you said something brilliantly the other day, which again, I've always done, but not been able to put into words. And that is, we have partnerships to solve a problem. And so if we're engaging in with a community organization or a social service organization or whatever, what problem can we solve together? Whether it's access to opera, whether it's an after-school program in a community that doesn't have it, whether it's offering singers to a community that doesn't have classically trained singers. I think there's always once you have enough conversations, you get to that point. And so every meeting that I go to, I start off by saying, I have no agenda here. I really want to get to know you and want to get to know your organization. And you can do the same with us. It goes both ways.
Right,
Partnerships are a two-way street. And I
right,
think many organizations get into it and they do a lot and don't get a lot in return, which
right.
isn't okay. That's not fair. We're still a business. But although our business is supporting our community, it's still a business. And so we want to support both organizations and support our community, our opera community, as well as that organization's community.
Yeah,
And so I think that's really how we want to approach it going forward. And hopefully it's not just a one-off
right,
partnership. We don't want to just partner with the Japanese community for Madame Butterfly, but how do we? And that answer is not always easy or it's not always easy, but how do we continue in that partnership to improve the services we're both offering?
right. Shared value, finding shared values.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
very good.
Um, Richard said audiences can sometimes find the music in newer works challenging compared to familiar historical pieces. If we present newer works, what can we do to help audiences listen to newer works in a new way?
Mm.
It's a great question.
Is a great question. That's a great question. So the music is challenging. Yes, I would say that we have the benefit of hearing Wagner multiple times and through the lens of music that came after Wagner and that was influenced by Wagner. We have the same thing with Mozart, music that was influenced by Mozart, and therefore Mozart doesn't sound weird to us. But I'm going to tell you that to his audiences, Mozart's music sounded like really out there. And to his audiences, Wagner's music sounded really out there and unsettling to them. Um, so the difference is they were experiencing it in a world where they were experiencing new things all the time in a different way. We weren't just putting our favorite things on Spotify, right? So we have a different resilience toward the unfamiliar music. But I always find it fascinating to put myself back into to listening to Mozart's music for the first time and hearing the horns in Don Giovanni, and people were like scared, terrified, because that was scary to them. And now we're just like, I love that part. um, I think part of it, I think, is preparing audiences to experience something new. I think because we get very comfortable in our lives, we all have to be willing to enter into something new. I also think I'm just gonna go out there. There's bad music and good music, to be honest. There's music you're gonna love, and music you're never gonna love. And your friend that sits right next to you is going to possibly love the thing that you can't stand right now, right? Um, so we can't predict how everybody's going to do this, but what we can do is work through some of our through our programs and our preparation materials for the audience, and hope that they choose to participate in those, to familiarize, to contextualize, to introduce, to explain, to familiarize. All of these things can help an audience start to prepare for that experience in the hall when it's not just entertainment. So we're not an entertain, we're not, we don't, this is another thing I'm gonna get on a little soapbox about, is art versus entertainment. Like, what are the differences? So entertainment is there to make me feel good. It's comfortable, it's easy, it's macaroni and cheese. It is just easy to do. But art requires us to stretch, to think, to feel more deeply, to rethink things in our mind. I mean, think about the last artful experience that you had that just made you kind of like a book you read that made you really start to just think about things differently, versus the book you read that was just like, oh, that was a page turner. That was a lot of fun. So I think we need to help our audiences understand what they're stepping into is not a Disney movie, right? Is not some, maybe it is. Sometimes we can absolutely, I'm not saying that art cannot be entertaining. Please don't misunderstand me on that. It can and should be entertaining, but it hopefully gives you a little bit more to chew on than just cotton candy at a fair, right? So how do we help people understand that? How do we give them, sometimes we can give you cotton candy at a fair. That is, I like that too sometimes. But what are you stepping into? What are you there to see? And how do we help you kind of build those resilience that resilience before you step in. That's our responsibility as a company. That's what programs and partnerships is going to be working on. Our marketing team will be working on. Our development team will be working with this. But hopefully, we'll do it slowly because you mentioned I was an educator at one point. Yes, I was an educator at one point, and you can't just throw everything at everybody at once. So how do we ease into these waters and not just by interjecting this into our upcoming seasons, but also building over time and accepting new audiences and diversifying our season so that there's always a place to step into, and it's not always just the one big bite of opera. Because while some opera audiences might be afraid of new works, sometimes new audiences are afraid of Verdi because it's big to them or it's unfamiliar to them. So that's all subjective. I hope I answered that question. That's a tough one. It's a really good question, and it's something that
Yes.
we always have to be thinking about as we help our audiences engage in this really big art form.
With that, I think we're out of time. Are there any final words or thoughts that you would like to say before we part ways?
Oh, I am so, so, so excited to be here. Um, Thrilled to be here in Denver. I'm thrilled to be at Opera Colorado. I'm thrilled to be working with this amazing team and the board of directors who are here. I have been so warmly welcomed by so many, and I look forward to continuing to hear what we need as a community to be successful as a company, and excuse me, and to continue learning from the entire community on how we can do this together, because it takes a whole village.
Does. And on that note, I'd just like to remind everyone to fill out the survey that we are still listening and learning. So please do fill out the survey of what you'd like to see, and not only on stage in Ellie, but
In the community.
throughout the whole organization and all the things we do throughout the state.
Yeah.
Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Barbara Lynn, for a wonderful conversation, and we'll
Thank,
see you all soon.
thank you, everybody. You make it possible. See you soon.